Are you ready to bleed your foes dry? Well, I am, and I'd like to show you exactly how you can too, in Path of Exile 3.25 Settlers of Kalguur. Talamoana Exiles, welcome to another Path of Exile 1 video. I know that was a cringe intro, but oh my goodness, I've tried recording this video 7 times now, and I haven't been able to do it. I promise this is going to be the time. Today, we are going to be looking at my league starter for 3.25, and that is Bleed Lacerate Gladiator, okay? A few disclaimers here. I am not an expert build creator, okay? I asked for advice on this build in my Discord, which you can join. The link is below, by the way, and I received tons of feedback, which I greatly appreciated. I'll shout out Omega Cybers, Valatis, I think Gardisto. There were some others as well. Thank you all so much for your help there. They told me not to go frenzy charges. I was being silly and going for frenzy charges. Shouldn't have done that. But anyways, I'm not an expert build creator, but I do like to make my own builds after doing a bit of research. Set out a goal for this league. I'm going to get 40 out of 40 challenges, and I'm going to play a decent bit of hardcore, including starting the league on hardcore. So I knew I needed to go a very defensive oriented character, and the Gladiator and all the new block stuff has that in spades. So that is why I decided to go Bleed Lacerate. It's new, it's shiny, it's fun, it's defensive. I think it's going to be very strong as well. So that's why I chose it. Now, I conducted quite a bit of research on it as well, not only looking at the new Gladiator Ascendancy, which of course is incredible and posted on PoE Planner, where we're going to be looking at everything today. It's also posted here on the Path of Exile website. Looked at all these nodes. They're awesome. You can build a very strong offensive and defensive character on a Gladiator now. I also did some historic research on PoE Ninja. If you didn't know, you could do this. You can go to builds, you can go to snapshot from Necropolis League or whatever league you have selected, and you can go to that league start and see exactly what your build looked like on league start. In my case, if I go to Lacerate and I'd like to do a Bleed Lacerate build, and that's Lacerate of Hemorrhaging, it's a transfigured gem. We'll talk about that more in a moment. You can see all the characters that were actually building it and where they were on day 2, day 3, and day 4 of the league. It's super cool to see their progression and what items they were going for and what struggles they had along the way. If we just click on this random person here, you can see this is going to be something that we're going to go for. They used Jack the Axe as their weapon. Obviously they went axes. They had a Reslatha's coil. That's something that a lot of these builds had similar to each other. Everything else is pretty, it can be pretty standard. Rares with resistances and health. Some people might use wild weapons and armor like this, the Surrender, or this right here, Usurper's Penance. But a lot of stuff remains the same. PoE Ninja is a great tool here. I very much recommend that you try using it out when you're doing research for your build, as I have done for my Bleed Lacerate Gladiator. Number 3, I curated all that information, of course, and now I'm going to present it to you here today because I have broken down my build into how I usually follow builds or craft builds for all of you. Now, we have 4 trees, okay? One goes up to Lab 1, the next one goes up to Lab 3, the next goes up to early red maps, I'm talking T12, T13, and then this goes to endgame with no clusters attached. I am not a huge currency generator, okay? I don't farm an absolute ton. I don't expect you to farm an absolute ton. So this is going to be a low investment build for now. If it works out, I will release a high investment video, but I, right now, don't necessarily know if it will pan out or not. A lot of people are speculating, okay? The meta has changed drastically. Of course, melee has been buffed, but lots of other stuff has changed as well. So while I think this will perform well and lots of other people are also confident that builds like this will succeed, we don't actually know. So I'm not going to go all crazy on the investment. What we're going to do in this video is look at the pathing through the passives, explain some of the choices that we made, why we're taking certain ascendancy nodes, and what you should look out for when it comes to items while you're progressing to that end game state. Additionally, I think this is vital. On screen right now is the Lacerate skill. This is what it looks like. You need to understand how it feels, how it looks before you play the skill itself. That's so vital because if you try something out and you don't like the feel of it, you're not going to want to progress far. Or if you do progress far, you're going to end up not having fun if it feels bad to you. Lots of people like the RF style of gameplay, and RF is Righteous Fire. It's basically AFK, right? You're running in circles. I don't necessarily like that. I like an active style of gameplay, and it looks like Bleed Lacerate Gladiator will fulfill that exact playstyle for me. Will it for you? Well, we're gonna find out by the end of this video. Okay, so before we dive into the tree itself, Bleed Lacerate of Hemorrhaging. It consists of you wielding an axe or a sword. I'd recommend axe and a shield, and running around swinging at monsters and sometimes killing them outright with your extreme physical damage, and in other times inflicting tons of bleeds on them that tear them down very quickly. This includes bosses, of course. This is not scaling raw damage, this is scaling dot damage in the form of bleed. So if you don't like damage over time abilities, then you should stray away from this particular build. We're not seeking to do massive bursts of single target flat damage here. Additionally, if you'd like something that is extremely offensive, that's pumping out a huge amount of damage very easily, this also probably isn't the build for you. There are likely other slam builds out there that will be scaling tremendously with Chieftain or Juggernaut or even Berserker that will be able to pump out all that damage. I, however, think that the real strength of this build lies within its survivability. Gladiator is going to be a masterclass in surviving Path of Exile, with the massive amount of block chance that we're able to get from the passive tree, in addition to the items we're going to wield, and the ascendancy that we choose. That's mainly why I want to play Gladiator. It's not only because it's fresh and new, it's because I'm also playing hardcore and I don't want to die. So if you don't want to die, I will recommend this build. Okay, I don't think there are any other disclaimers when it comes to the playstyle, so we're gonna get directly into the passive tree right now. Like I said before, I have 4 passive trees for you because I like to follow these passive trees in 4 chunks. So this is the first one right here. Essentially what we're going to be doing, everybody, is pathing directly to defensive nodes here. We're getting this life node up here, Constitution. We're getting this right here, Command of Steel, which is greatly increasing the defenses on our shield. We have more shield nodes down here, Testudo and Retaliation. We're also pathing all the way over here pretty much right off the bat to make sure that we get some leech for life and, more importantly, mana, because we want that mana leech for our attack damage so we're not constantly needing to use a mana flask or rely on anything regarding mana regeneration. We just want to be able to do damage and get that mana back. That's the basics of this tree leading up to the first labyrinth. And when you hit that first labyrinth, everybody, I highly recommend you go and you get Determined Survivor, which is gain 50% base chance to block from equipped shield instead of the shield's value. And if you do want to go dual wielding, which this build does not, it inherently doubles the bonuses from dual wielding for block. Now we're going shield. This node is incredibly strong. It basically turns you into a defensive master once you grab this node, and you will be so safe going all the way into endgame once you have this and a decent shield. Tree number 2 is when we start getting some actual offensive nodes here, going up to that third lab. You path all the way over here and you get Hatchet Master, including this one right here. Gain 2 rage on hit with axes. Rage is very important for this build in terms of its attack speed and the more damage multiplier that it's now granting us. Then we're also going to get Bloodletting right here, which is going to greatly increase the amount of damage that we're doing on bleeding targets. And then we also have this chance right here, 10% chance to aggravate bleeding on targets you hit with attacks. That essentially means we're treating them as moving when they're aggravated and we deal more damage to them. In addition, we want to get this mastery right here. Attack hits aggravate any bleeding on targets which is older than 4 seconds. So if we're constantly attacking targets, constantly putting bleed, and our bleed lasts long enough, they're going to basically always be aggravated, which is good. Now, there's a little bit of a debate going on in the community right now. I can't find an answer on it, but that's Crimson Dance. I don't know whether or not we can use Crimson Dance with aggravate or not. I don't think it works at all. It says you can inflict bleeding on an enemy up to 8 times. Your bleeding does not deal any extra damage while the enemy is moving, 50% less damage with bleeding. Does that conflict with what we're doing here with aggravate? I have no idea. Let me know in the comments below. In addition to pathing down to this axe node right here, we're also going to get Disciple of the Unyielding. We're going to stack those endurance charges. Those are big defensive things now. They do 4% reduction to all elemental damage that you take for each endurance charge, which is absolutely massive. We want to get that pretty darn quickly. Okay, and in this tree, we are in early reds. Essentially, we grab a few nodes right over here, including Berserking, which is getting our attack speed up there. We're getting more rage. We also path over to Gratuitous Violence in lab number 2. Please remember to get Gratuitous Violence in lab number 2, and then More Than Skill in lab number 3. Gratuitous Violence is going to really help out with your clear. It's basically the explodey node for this build, which is super cool. And then this right here is going to make it so that you're basically blocking all the time. We also are going to get War of Attrition, which is that big damage node, especially if you expect to have longer fights, which we will. We don't have a ton of DPS, I don't think, at least at League Start. It's going to be pretty long fights, but that's totally fine. We're focusing on survivability here, and we will be able to outlast any pinnacles that step into our path. Then we start zooming over to this end of the tree right here, grabbing this shield node, this armor life node, this bleeding node, this barbarism node right here, and getting ready to get an awesome thread of hope so we can take this node cleaving and slaughter as well. In addition to, I think, one other defensive node here it should be able to hit. I believe it is Spiked Bulwark. I think it's a large ring, and it'll help us out quite a bit there. All right, and this is the end game tree with no cluster jewels, so you don't need to rely on rolling some awesome cluster jewels here. We just finish up the pathing right over on this end. We get Battle Trance, which is another rage node. We get Vanquisher as well, which is increasing our fizz damage and crushing enemies that are nearby. We grab a few other nodes right along here, including this Life Mastery. And we're basically done at that point, where there's a few other small clusters that we're grabbing. You know, we get an Unwavering Stance, making sure that all of our defenses are in check, making sure that our ascendancy stuff that we've grabbed is good. But essentially, that is the tree, everyone. We're focusing on shield nodes, we're focusing on bleed nodes, we're focusing on axe nodes too, and a little bit of endurance charges down there. Remember, with this build, we are focusing on defenses first. We want to be able to withstand massive hits and survive all the way to end game, because I want to survive in hardcore. I want to make it to level 90 and get that awesome achievement. All right, and we are back to PoE Ninja just to talk about a few items that we should be looking out for our Lacerate of Hemorrhaging Gladiator on League Start. There's two key uniques that we want to grab. Basically everything else can just be rare, and of course our potions can be whatever we really need to fix on our build. The two items we really want to find that are unique, then we might need to go on the trade website for, are Jack the Axe, which helps us scale our bleed damage tremendously, and the other one is Rislatha's Coil, which also massively increases the amount of physical damage that we're doing and just gives us a lot of life. Everything else, if you go build after build here from Necropolis League, people who were going Gladiator, Lacerate of Hemorrhaging, it's just rare items in addition to those two uniques. There are, of course, ways that we'll be able to scale it out as we go into week 1, 2, 3, 4, and beyond, but I really want to make sure that this is a good, scalable build, something that I can scale and continue to build upon on my channel in the future. As for links on this skill, pretty basic. We want Multi-Strike, Brutality, Melee Physical Damage, Volatility, and Fortify, all linked up to that Lacerate of Hemorrhaging. For your movement skill, you can do Shield Dash or Shield Rush, whatever, or Leap Slam. That's what I'm going to go with. Leap Slam is the GOAT. And then for auras, you're going to want all the basics for melee. You're going to want War Banner, Determination, and Pride, then Blood and Sand for this particular Lacerate skill. You can also do the epic cast when damage taken, Molten Shell, and Blood Rage, which is, you know, the classic thing that everyone always grabs on these type of setups. And then you should be set on the skill gem front. There's always room for experimentation. I'm sure there are some Awakened gems that you should be able to scale up to with this particular build. But for now, for League Start, you don't need to worry about your Awakened gem setup. Okay, and I just noticed in my other 3 trees, Versatile Combatant was not skilled here. Please, I don't want to do a 9th take on this video, so I'm just going to remind you guys, I'll put it on screen when I'm presenting those trees as well. Take Versatile Combatant when you're pathing over here to get these shield nodes and these endurance charge nodes. It'll surely help with defenses, especially early on when you're really getting online. So I have seen some people a little bit scared about this build clearing and its single target being good, but its clear being bad. I've watched some videos on Bleed Lacerate Gladiator of Hemorrhaging, and it really seems to do pretty well. It's not going to be blasting through maps like some other builds might, but I think it'll be fun, it'll be powerful, and it will be very defensively apt. So if you're looking for something new, if you're looking for something that hasn't been strong in a long time and really feels meaty, chunky to play, and is very defensively powerful, I do think that this is a good league starter for you. I'm going to try it in hardcore. I'm going to be doing it live. If it sucks, and I'm sorry, but I see a lot of other people experimenting with all different types of wild builds, as I've talked about in my prior videos, and I really just wanted to get mine out there, the one that I am going to be playing and experimenting in this absolutely wild Path of Exile league that is just about to come out. I will have a video coming out highlighting some other creators' builds before league launch. It's going to be in my typical unhinged style, so be ready for that. It will highlight this build too, and I'm really hoping this build works out. I will also be playing with Lacerate through the campaign itself, and right when I hit lab, I'm going to be farming out Lacerate of Hemorrhaging. That might be a stopper in SSF if you have really bad luck, and I'm very sorry if that's the case, but that's what I'm going to try to go for. If you're in Trade League, it's going to be very, very easy to pick up. I'm going to try to farm for it, but if I fail after, 5 or 10 attempts, I might have to pick it up. I'm in hardcore though, so hopefully I don't die to Azaro while farming for this gem. That would be pretty horrendous. Also, I thought this would be a good idea too, if this build does end up failing, but you do choose Gladiator and you do have a high level character with some bleed stuff around. I do see that there are a lot of other styles of Bleed Gladiator floating around out there, so I will link to those videos in the description of this particular video. So if we do end up failing together, Exiles, we can swap to a different Bleed build and still be okay and still be able to play this same character. Truly, as I said at the top of the video, and as I've said many times before on my channel, I am not an expert build creator. I'm just here showing you guys what I will be playing, what build I will be following, and how I potentially will be failing when Path of Exile 3.25 launches this coming Friday. I hope you join me and try out this build, and if you see problems with it, call them out below. I'm not going to delete your comments. I'm not going to hide your comments. I'm going to embrace you absolutely destroying my build, as my community did earlier today when I gave them a preview of the passive skill tree. It's going to be fun. I'm going to try this. I hope it goes well. Anyways, that's all for this video, Exiles. If you liked it, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more Path of Exile 1 content, and I will see you in the next video, hopefully me succeeding as a Bleed Lacerate Gladiator in Settlers of Kalguur. Talkative, have a wonderful evening.